Hello, everyone. If you enjoy watching 36 of the best stock car drivers duel it out each weekend, this is the spot for you. On this podcast, we cover all the major news surrounding the sport of NASCAR and provide an analysis on each race. Strap your seatbelts tight and enjoy. It has been a while since I recorded the last episode. Since then, we have had two NASCAR Cup Series races, Daytona and Atlanta. Of course, Daytona, the bigger event, is the Daytona 500. Overall, I thought the whole Daytona 500 weekend was a good weekend. Of course, the race did not happen until Monday because of rain. NASCAR can never get away from rain. But when the engines were fired, everything got going. It felt like a normal race day. To begin the race, NASCAR brought in Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, one of the biggest faces in the world, to say the three most famous words in motorsports: drivers, start your engines. I don't think NASCAR could have chosen a better celebrity to bring into the sport. The Rock is a hype person. He did a good job showing his excitement for the event, his appreciation for being there. So I thought The Rock did a phenomenal job at his role in the Daytona 500. Jumping into the race, it started very weird. There was a wreck on lap 6. Jimmie Johnson was involved, 7-time NASCAR Cup Series champion, comes back for one race or a few races every year. Unfortunately, his chances to win the race ended on the 6th lap out of 200. Harrison Burton got collected in the wreck as well. Man, I feel bad for Harrison Burton. He has not had any luck at any of his Daytona 500 starts. In his rookie year, he found himself flipping in the backstretch, barrel rolling due to a wreck early in the race too. Burton can never get away from wrecks at the Daytona 500. Hopefully his time comes soon. I feel like he's a good super speedway racer. It just has not worked out until now. Carson Hocevar was just a bystander. Got collected in the lap 6 crash too. Gotta feel bad for him. He is in the number 77 Spire Motorsports Chevrolet. I know he was very excited to get to Daytona. Unfortunately, his young season ended very early. It didn't end. He was able to continue on, but there was way too much damage on his car. His chances of winning were shot short. Moving on to the rest of Stage 1. Once again, one of the weirdest stages I feel like I've ever watched as a NASCAR fan. The drivers were saving fuel to the point where the draft did not matter. AJ Allmendinger lost the draft in the pack. He was running faster than the pack of cars ahead of him because all the front runners were managing their fuel, trying to save enough to make it to the end of the stage. That was really weird. I remember Denny Hamlin after the race, or even in the race, over the radio, he said, "I want to race. What are we doing?" He did not want to drive slow. 170 miles an hour is not slow whatsoever, but at Daytona, very slow. One of the slowest lap times I think we've seen ever at the Daytona 500. So he had some frustration for the way the pack was running, but there's nothing he could do. If he decides to run quicker than everyone, he's just going to end up shooting himself in the foot for later on in the race. So that was really weird. The rest of Stage 1 was clean. There was no major wreck. Stage 2 was filled with good racing. There was no major story of Stage 2. I think the drivers saw the lap 6 crash and were just trying to make it to the end, at least to Stage 3. Stage 2 really did not have any big issue. There was green flag pit stops, no issues on pit road, nothing major at least. So Stage 2, it was better. The drivers were going full speed. They were not saving fuel because they did not have to make it to the end of the stage. They all knew that pit stop was coming, so they had free range to go race as fast as much as they wanted. Stage 3 is where things got very interesting. This is the point where if you're in the back, you got to get to the front because it's the last stage of the race. This is where the winner will be decided. And I think Stage 3 was obviously the best stage of the race. 3 wide racing, many rows deep in the pack. You have to enjoy that as a race fan. If you see 3 wide racing on Daytona, it's automatically going to be put in for a good race. The drivers were able to manage it very clean. This was until Alex Bowman got into the back of William Byron, who started a chain reaction crash. Big wreck, many drivers involved, 10 to 15 cars, I'd say. Ended many drivers' days. Brad Keselowski was one of the drivers who was a favorite for the race. I saw many people pick Brad to win. Unfortunately, he got caught up in this crash. Started by Alex Bowman, yet Bowman didn't really know he even started the crash because they're going way too fast at this point. You don't know what's going on. He pushed his teammate into another car. After the race, no driver was blaming Bowman for the wreck. It just happens at Daytona. This set up a 2-lap dash to decide the winner of the Daytona 500, which ended up only being a 1-lap dash. Ross Chastain, William Byron, Alex Bowman, and Austin Cindric were all in position to win the Daytona 500. They almost hit the checkered flag, or the white flag, which means 1 lap to go, but they crashed as soon as they were crossing the start-finish line. This forced NASCAR to end the race early due to having a wreck of cars blocking the track. It would have been impossible to clear the track before the leaders made it back to the finish line. This set up a controversial appearance on the win. William Byron crossed the start-finish line first, but Alex Bowman on his outside was ahead of Byron when the caution lights came out. Before we get into the winner of the race, we can talk about that wreck on the last lap. Ross Chastain made a move from the outside lane to the inside, getting into Austin Cindric, ending both of their days early. Not really early, it just ended their shot at winning the race. Austin Cindric was in the tri-oval grass before he turned around and started heading back up onto the track, which is what forced NASCAR to call the caution. Ross Chastain can be blamed for this wreck. However, he did say he does not care if he is blamed for it. He made a move to try to win one of the biggest races in the world. He is going to go to sleep at night just fine knowing he attempted to do something to win the Daytona 500. Of course, Austin Cindric's not going to be too happy because there was still a whole nother lap of racing to go through. But that's just pack racing. That's Daytona. You got to put yourself in a position to win the race, right? That's what Chastain tried doing. So getting to the winner of the race, it was officially announced that William Byron had the lead when NASCAR called the caution. It was very close to becoming a Alex Bowman Daytona 500 win. However, NASCAR over the radios announced William Byron won the race, a 1-2 finish for Hendrick Motorsports in Byron and Bowman, which is very fitting because on the day of the Daytona 500, it was also their 40th anniversary of being a team in existence. So, congrats to Hendrick Motorsports, congrats to William Byron. We can talk about the finish. It upset many that NASCAR has the control of deciding the winner by a press of a button. However, NASCAR did release a image of when they pressed the button to display the caution, and at the time, William Byron was just ahead of Alex Bowman. So, all in all, you can get mad at the decision, but it's a fair rule. NASCAR explained it well. William Byron is the winner of the Daytona 500. Moving on to Atlanta, I was at Atlanta actually as a media member, a reporter. I was very excited to get down to the racetrack for the first time in 2024. It felt like forever since I was at Martinsville. So I was glad to be back at the racetrack. The Cup Series race was on Sunday, so I was already there for a day covering trucks and Xfinity, which were pretty boring. The races were not what I hoped for, especially for at Atlanta. This is another super speedway. Actually, the 2024 season opened up on 2 super speedways, which is something I don't think we have seen for a while. It used to go to California for the second race of the year. However, that track is now demolished. So they are now in Atlanta. And I talked to Kyle Larson, Hendrick Motorsports driver of the number 5 car, what his thoughts were on having two super speedway races to begin the year. Here's what he had to say.
I wish we didn't have as many super speedways throughout our whole schedule. So yeah, going back to back is whatever. I'm glad I didn't crash last week because you'd be a little bit more nervous coming here for sure with how crashes seem to be in the next gen stuff. So it's just Vegas is like a more pure race than what Daytona and Atlanta is. So just a lot more is out of your control. Like last week, I mean, you saw half the field get wiped out into turn 3. Like the same thing had happened here. So that, as far as you can get yourself in a hole if you're just unlucky, in the first 2 races. So that part stinks, but everybody's kind of dealing with the same thing, and we're all on the same schedule. So
I was not a fan of starting the season on 2 super speedway style races, especially when there are so many new fans that NASCAR gained over the offseason. I don't want these new fans to expect this style of racing every weekend. However, I think over time they will understand that it will not be that style of racing every weekend. Atlanta was a beautiful day. It was decently warm, 65 degrees, sunny, cloudy day out, partly cloudy. It was a good day for a race. Last year it was freezing when I was in Atlanta, so I would much prefer the 65 degrees and sun out rather than it being a 30-degree race day. That was awful. But the race started, and on lap 2 there was a huge crash. Once again, both races in the 2024 season opened up with a crash in the first 10 laps. On Daytona, it was lap 6, and in Atlanta, it was on lap 2. They barely even made it a lap and a half before crashing. I think it was officially announced that 14 cars were involved in the lap 2 crash, and it took out some pretty big names. At least many cars got damaged from the crash. However, this did not really impact the rest of the race. The rest of the race was amazing. I'm going to get to the good parts of the race. There is so much to talk about. The first being Austin Cindric taking the leader 4 wide for the lead. That is unheard of. One of the most aggressive moves I have seen while watching NASCAR, and I've been watching NASCAR since I was 3, and I'm now 20. So this was a very aggressive move. The whole media center was going crazy when they saw that. I'm sure the fans were screaming on their feet. The announcers were hyping it up. It was awesome. One of the best moves I have ever seen at a NASCAR race. Not only did he get the lead, he sent second, third, fourth, and fifth 4 wide into the turn. That was crazy. That is something I will remember forever as a NASCAR fan. One of the most aggressive moves I have seen for the lead. Throughout the rest of the race, we saw some crashes, we saw some spins, one involving Joey Logano, Chris Buescher, Denny Hamlin spun, Chase Elliott spun, Ty Gibbs spun out. So there was a lot of mini wrecks heading on into stage 3 and in stage 3. But I want to talk about the end of this race. What a finish. 3 wide across the line. The margin of victory was 0.007 seconds. This marked the 3rd closest finish in NASCAR history. It was insane. I was on pit road watching the finish. I have a video of it. The whole place was flipping out. Nobody knew who won until Daniel Suarez's name crossed Ryan Blaney's for P1 on the leaderboard on the big screen. This finish will be remembered forever. It'll be in those YouTube compilations of best finishes in NASCAR history. I mean, it was the best finish I think I've ever seen in my lifetime. Lucky enough, I was there to see it in person. I apologize. I think I said that it was 0.007 seconds of the margin of victory. Well, it was actually 0.003. I got 0.007 because that was the difference between first and third. However, the margin of victory was 0.003 seconds That is the third closest finish in NASCAR history. The first thing I thought of when I saw that finish was the iconic finish from the Cars movie between Lightning McQueen, Chick Hicks, and the King, when Lightning McQueen stuck his tongue out and all three drivers tied. That was the first thing I thought of because it replicated it so much. I remember making a post for the Instagram page, and I was late. People beat me to it. I still posted it regardless. Everyone was comparing the Atlanta finish to the Cars finish, which I thought was awesome. This also did a great job of expanding the sport. This made it in SportsCenter top 10. I don't know how it wasn't number 1. I think it was number 9 or 10. That is wrong. There is no way nothing that happened in another sport could have beaten what happened in Atlanta on Sunday night. What was even more interesting is that Daniel Suarez won this race. This was his second ever NASCAR Cup Series win. His first came at Sonoma back in 2022. So it's been a while since Suarez made it to victory lane. This is also interesting to look at for a playoff scenario. When you win a NASCAR race, you are locked into the playoffs. Over the last year, 2 years or so, Suarez has been a bubble driver. He is always either inside the top 16 or just outside. This win for Daniel Suarez will be huge come August when many drivers are fighting for the final playoff spot. It won't matter for him. He's already locked in. Many people on social media, Twitter, Instagram, were saying that this was the best NASCAR race that they've ever watched. I can't think of a race that beats it. I I enjoyed it. I was there, so I'm kind of biased. However, this race had everything. The Cindric 4 wide pass, the wrecks that everyone looks for at a super speedway race, and nothing will ever beat the finish that we saw. Atlanta will be a race remembered for years. It'll be shown everywhere. I am excited to continue the season. The next race is Las Vegas, which is a 1.5 mile intermediate track. A different track than what we have seen for the first 2 races of the season. I am very excited to tune into it and see who dominates out in the West. We have officially crossed the finish line for episode 3. Thank you for tuning in and listening to this episode. I am excited to see who, like I said, wins in Las Vegas. Talk about that in the next episode. See ya.